The New Orleans Pelicans are set to take on the San Antonio Spurs in the play-in tournament game Wednesday night. So let's hear the San Antonio Spurs perspective in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans in NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen every day. We're free and available 5 days a week for y'all, breaking down everything you want to know about this team, no paywall or anything like that. I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, credential member of the media, Pelicans Insider. I got a fun episode for y'all today. We got Jeff Garcia, host of Locked On Spurs, coming on today's show to give you the San Antonio Spurs perspective on this matchup. He's kind of confident. It's going to get proven wrong, hopefully. So today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by PrizePicks. Check out PrizePicks.com. Use promo code NBA or go to your app store and download the app today. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. So let's get to it. A crossover that only Locked On can bring you. So we got to Jeff Garcia, host of the Locked On Spurs podcast. All right, joining me now on Locked On Pelicans, I got Jeff Garcia at Jeff G Spurs Zone, host of the Locked On Spurs podcast. Jeff, first and foremost, this is how you thought the Spurs season was going to end up?
No, this is not exactly how I thought it would end up. I thought they'd be circling the bottom of the barrel in the West, let alone the NBA. I did not expect them to exceed all any expectations. I just thought, just stay healthy and let these guys get minutes and we're good. That's all I was looking for, just development. And boy, have they really surpassed expectations out in San Antonio. Begins with Gregg Popovich, once again, that Spurs system just shining bright right now, able to get the best of what he has to work with. At least to start of the season, it was just basically all-star-less until Dejounte got the nod. But let's just sum it up this way. They were able to surpass all expectations by starting. Now, brace yourself, everybody. This is under a Popovich watch, a 19-year-old rookie for 12 straight games. That is uncommon in San Antonio, but he had to roll what he had, and that was Josh Primo. And here they are taking on your Pelicans in the play-in game. A good thing to hear, though, from the players, this play-in game was a goal they set out to beginning of the season. They wanted to repeat going into the play-in. They did it last year against Memphis. They lost. Hopefully, they can advance against your Pelicans. But all in all, yeah, I give it a solid B-plus season, a B-plus season for the Spurs. And by the way, Jake, I swear to God, I think gremlins follow me everywhere when it comes to me and technology. Yeah, sorry about that. No camera on this. I cannot figure this out. Gremlins follow me everywhere.
Good. We were trying before. It just wasn't working today, which is fine, but it's kind of funny here. I don't know, like the image here on the screen, it's black and gray, black and silver Spurs colors. Yeah, so it's kind of appropriate here, I think, for everything.
Or the Spurs funeral. All black.
Yeah, there we go. Look, my audience is going to love hearing things like that. I think for both of us, right? This was maybe a little bit unexpected at times in the season, the Pels getting off to a 1-12 start. And then kind of around the All-Star break or so, right? It looked like the Spurs were almost going to try and tank, trading away a guy like Derek White, kind of moving with, as you said, Josh Primo and some of that youth movement. And maybe it's partially being bailed out by how bad the Lakers were. Both of our teams kind of getting some luck from that team just floundering down the stretch. But it's impressive to see, where do you pin a lot of the credit on? Is that Gregg Popovich being Gregg Popovich? Is that Murray being an all-star? What was kind of the catalyst for them, finishing the season in the way that they did?
Popovich. It starts with him. And, the driving force on the court was Dejounte Murray. You saw, at times when Murray was out, they would flounder. They didn't know, who's going to be the floor general for the team. Late in the season, a guy named Trey Jones, he stepped in and did a masterful job filling in for Dejounte Murray, who was out quite some games to end the season, except for that Dallas game out in Dallas. But Murray, Popovich, begins with them for this iteration of the Spurs. And then after that, I think it was the steady play of Jakob Poeltl. I think he's been an unsung hero for the Spurs throughout the season. And then Keldon Johnson, coming on strong. I would say after the All-Star break-ish, with him, the knock was whatever, just it's a slack off him. You'll be fine. He ain't going to do anything. And then he started adding a three-point shot, and he's become very deadly with that. That's something your Pelicans fans are definitely going to watch in that game tomorrow night against the Spurs. Just accurate. Just for a moment there, Jake,
was
he was
40% from three. Yeah, wow,
exactly. He was
5.3 attempts per game. That's look good numbers there.
Yeah. So his late bloom, if you will, really helped the Spurs. But basically, they've had a all hands on deck mentality throughout the most of the season. It was everybody needs to contribute, everybody needs to play defense, and that's something that Popovich stressed since media day when he called out the team saying, "I don't have all stars," at least at the time before Dejounte got his nod. And I think they've had this bunker mentality that it's all of us. We have to get this done. It's not roll the ball out to DeMar and yay, DeMar, do what you got to do. That those days are long gone. They need Dejounte to be Dejounte, Keldon to be Keldon, Jakob to be Jakob, Devin Vassell to be Devin Vassell, Lonnie Walker to provide the punch off the bench. Everything needs to be clicking for this team to succeed. If Lonnie's not clicking, then there's a lot of punch off the bench. They lose. So it's not like, the Pelicans, you could pretty much give the ball to BI, and he could do a bulk
CJ,
of the work.
right?
Like they
got two guys that can kind of go and do work. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Spurs, they need help. Like even if DeJounte's rolling and dropping a triple-double, they still need help. That's how much of a unit this team needs to be getting into the play-in.
Is Murray healthy for this game? You mentioned he had missed a couple of games. Is there any concern about his health at all?
No. There's no health issues. If anything, it's
wishful thinking on my part, maybe.
Yeah. If anything, he addressed it at the ending of the season, saying that he lost a lot of weight because of a virus he caught. He lost 8 to 10 pounds.
Oh, wow.
But he's not worried about that. He just said, "Look, I'll gain that weight back in the off season. I'm just focusing on the game at hand." But no major injuries. No, somebody got to watch out for me. I mean, the closest maybe is Lonnie, because he was out a significant time with back spasms. But even then, my sources said that he was fine after the game. The back spasm he suffered against your Pelicans, that he was fine shortly thereafter. But I think all in all, I think the Spurs team is coming in close to near 100% health. And I think this young team, they're hungry, Jake. They are hungry. They're out to prove things. They feel they are not given their due, and they feel this collectively, this Spurs team constantly has been saying we're better than our record shows. We're better than our record shows. It just took time. And if you're a Spurs fan, you're loving that now they're clicking at the right time. They play better on the road post All-Star break. They went on a 4-game winning streak post All-Star break. They beat a Nuggets team in Denver. They're just really clicking at the right time.
Yeah, no, I think both teams kind of are peaking, and it's going to make this matchup kind of fun. Like, I love the play-in tournament because the stakes are like intense, right? This feels like Game 7 in a sense of the NBA Finals, even though it's not. It really isn't. I love that both teams, it's win or go home. So coming up here next to today's episode of Locked On Pelicans, let's talk a little bit about what makes the Spurs so scary, how they got where they are, specifically with on-the-court stuff. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. But before we get to that, today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by PrizePicks. All right, Pelicans fans, are you looking for a daily fantasy option for the NBA? Then you need to try the award-winning app PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. I love this, and I know you will too. It's super easy to use. In PrizePicks, you pick 2 to 5 players in an over-under on their projections, and you can win up to 10 times an entry. And it's just you versus the projected numbers, not someone with a wall of screens, a machine learning algorithm to find the best sleepers and things like that. You see the numbers and you pick above it or below it. And entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's really that easy. And PrizePicks is safe and they offer fast withdrawals. Plus, you can use it on the award-winning app that's available on both the App Store and Google Play. And PrizePicks offers any prop you can think of: points scored, rebounds, steals. They offer all of the star players as well as those role players only receiving a handful of minutes, like Herb Jones, if you want to go over on the steals. And it's not just NBA. They have MLB right now, MMA. When college football and the NFL are back, you can get in on that on PrizePicks as well. So for a limited time, PrizePicks has an exclusive no-brainer of an offer for all of our listeners. Our listeners get $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePick entry scores a single point, but you've got to use promo code NBA. That's right. This is an exclusive offer available for Locked On listeners. Sign up today and use promo code NBA for $50 for free. Free money right there if a player in your first PrizePick entry scores a single point. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is also brought to you by BetOnline.net. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. So find all of the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs and the start of Major League Baseball season over at BetOnline.net. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, whether it's live betting. You'd have made a killing the live betting line against the Golden State Warriors for the Pelicans in the playoffs. When you want esports, they've got it there and more. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action, including the Pelicans -5 right now over at betonline.net. It's creeping. It started at 5.5. Now it's 5. People taking the Pelicans maybe here. Could be the play, or I guess the Spurs, which means maybe you can get some good odds on the Pelicans. So go over to betonline.net. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen every day. We're free and available 5 days a week for y'all, wherever you get your podcasts, and available on YouTube. Talking with Jeff Garcia, host of Locked On Spurs. All right, so you kind of went over a little bit of like the Spurs just in general. You know, to get where they are, to get into the play-in tournament, even at 10, as you said, they're kind of playing some of their best basketball. What's that look like on the court for the Spurs? What makes them so scary? And this is a team that won the season series against New Orleans 3-1. When you look at them and they're kind of everything's working well, what's this team look like a little bit? What should Pelicans fans expect?
Yeah, well, one thing that's really has them clicking right now is the fact that two things that stand out, and it's specifically again going back to that whole post All-Star break, because that's where they really started to get the gears and grinding and going. Their 3-point attempts shot up. They were one of the worst teams pre All-Star break, as just attempting them, shot up to 33.6 a game. Another thing that I found very baffling pre All-Star break was the fact that they were not getting to the free throw line as much. They were one of the worst free throw attempting teams in the league. You follow that up with the post All-Star break, shot up now to 25.1. Now you're thinking, okay, that's still kind of a low number, but that's how bad the Spurs were in that first half of the season. So the 3-point attempts are up, their free throw attempts are up. I like that. That shows they're being aggressive. Maybe they're getting a little bit more respect from the referees, who's not seeing them as just a bunch of kids out there.
Not always easy for some of these teams, man. The Pelicans fans feel the same way of like they should be having more respect from the refs. And I know like with Murray, he seems like he should be.
Yeah. And then all in all, you're just seeing more of a collective unit from this team. You're getting contributions from a Josh Primo, a 19-year-old, the youngest player in the NBA. He's started 12 straight games for the Spurs. You're looking at a big key, and I think is going to be one of my 2 X factors heading into this game, is Josh Richardson. Considered a throw-in for the Derek White deal with Boston. And my goodness, has he fit in so well. You look at the numbers, and that's good. He's putting up numbers, he's scoring, but I think it is the intangible that he's bringing to this team that was lacking before the trade was made, and it is just nastiness. He's a dog out there. The Spurs didn't have that type of player meshing with the team. He's not afraid to talk some trash on the court. As a matter of fact, even Josh Primo is getting bad habits from him, or this good habits if you're a Spurs fan. He's talking trash on the court. He's very physical. He's not afraid. He's not going to back down. And I think this young Spurs team need that kind of veteran on the roster. So Josh Richardson is kind of an unsung hero towards the end of the season. I think he's going to be huge for the Spurs in this playing game, because he's like one of their few, very, very few veterans, like legit NBA veterans that have gotten significant time. Sure, Murray is a veteran, but let's not forget Murray lost the season due to injury. And for about 2 to 3 seasons, he was playing behind a guy named Tony Parker, DeMar DeRozan, Kawhi Leonard, Rudy Gay, Patty Mills. So now he's finally getting his time to shine. So those valuable NBA minutes now are coming to him. All in all, this is a very, in my opinion, my biased opinion, it is a very dangerous Spurs team for your Pelicans. You mentioned, they won the season series 3 games. They went through all those 3 wins came in New Orleans too.
2 of them.
2 of them, yes, yeah, 2 of them. Excuse me, yeah, 2 of them came in New Orleans. My mistake. So the Spurs have shown they can beat New Orleans in their gym. They handled at least one game with CJ and Bi. We'll see how that carries over. But no, but CJ is the one player that scares me because historically, he sees silver and black jerseys and he just goes bananas.
He's got a good historical record against him.
He's done that already. He did that in Portland. He averages nearly 25 plus points per game in his history versus the Spurs. I mean, he just shoots the lights out. So I expect the Spurs to really try to key on him and hopefully slow him down. But no, I mean, still, the Pelicans, dangerous team. I mean, I look at Bi, I look at McCollum. The one man that scares me the most is Valanciunas. He's the one that really puts a little bit of fear in me.
So, I think that's going to be a really interesting matchup in this one, right? The Jakob Poeltl versus Valanciunas matchup. And I thought, at least in that last game in like late March of 26, that Poeltl did really well against New Orleans. Like he's not going to win most improved player, but you could see him getting some votes in that category, I think.
Yeah. I guess the Pelicans, he's averaging about close to 2 blocks a game, 1.7, and he shoots about 62% versus the Pelicans. However, in that individual matchup with Jonas, Jonas takes the cake. I mean that he just overwhelms Jakob Poeltl. By the way, Dejounte Murray did admit that he is a fan of Valanciunas in the final game.
Oh, interesting. I hadn't heard that yet. Okay. I like it.
He said that he said he's a fan of him. He likes his game and that he respects his game. And he made it very, very clear that he is a big fan of the big man in New Orleans.
No, that's funny. I was almost expecting you to mention Herb Jones right there. Since that's kind of like a key matchup, I think, right? Like you're going to see Herb Jones, who has an outside chance of making an all NBA defensive team this year, matched up on him, and he's done well on him throughout the season. But one thing I noticed is, from looking at some of these past games and watching some of the video, even if they kind of slow down Murray, and he's had a couple of good games against New Orleans, he's had some subpar shooting matchups against New Orleans this season. He's dishing out assists. He's a walking triple double, basically, almost. If he's kind of taken out of the game, do you still feel pretty confident in the Spurs and what they're going to be capable of doing in this one?
Yeah, I think so. I'm confident in that department again, but I'm not trying to beat a dead horse here. But again, I'm not confident with the Jonas matchup because if you look at the head-to-head series this past season, Valanciunas averages 11 rebounds per game against the Spurs. Jakob 9. Who's the leading scorer against San Antonio? It's Valanciunas. He averages close to 18 points per game versus the Spurs. So it's not Bi, it's not CJ. Okay, fine, it's a small sample size, but nevertheless, it's really him. And I think the Spurs are gonna have to look out for him. And it's just the size of New Orleans as well. It's Jonas. I think it's Jackson.
And they start Jackson Hayes right up there. So you're basically running 2 7-footers, including one that's like an insanely vertical kind of player.
Right. The length on that and the Spurs, that's if there's a quote unquote weakness on this team, it's depth at big man. Look, Jakob is good. He's good, but he's not a dual threat. He's not going to create his own shot. He doesn't have even just a midi, nothing. He has a little kind of a soft hook put shot, but he doesn't really go to that. And then you go to an unproven rookie, Jock Landale, who can shoot the lights out, stretch the floor. But, again, can he survive the bright lights of an elimination game? And then there's Zach Collins, who is good, but is he enough to slow down the big men that New Orleans can throw out against San Antonio? So I'm really looking at that paint battle. And in my opinion, I think it may come down to that. Can the Spurs contain the Pelicans big man? And we'll find out,
I know. That's good insight on that there. You came with the numbers and everything too for Valanciunas, which was great. All right, coming up, we'll wrap up our conversation here with Jeff Garcia of Locked On Spurs here in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. But before we get to that, today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by RockAuto.com. I work on my cars. I'm restoring an old car right now, and the only place I go for auto parts is RockAuto.com. I don't go to those chain stores, and there's two around the corner from me, because they're not going to have what I'm looking for. And if they do, on the off chance, have that part sitting in their warehouse somewhere, who knows whenever it's going to get there, I'm going to overpay because they know I'm a captive audience. They're going to charge me whatever they think is fair, but it's going to be overpriced because they're out to make a profit. Well, RockAuto.com is a family business that's been serving do-it-yourselfers online for over 20 years, and you have computers with access to RockAuto.com at home and in your pocket, so you can save time and money when using RockAuto.com. Do not choose to spend 30, 50, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or a car dealership. Go to RockAuto.com right now. Look at their super easy to use website. You click your make, your model, your year. That's it. They're going to show you everything available for your car or truck. And I mean, they have everything. Motor oil, new carpet, brake parts, tail lamps. I just ordered a set of new brake pads for there. You can choose the specifications. You want like racing brake pads? You can get that. You need things that are just going to work for city driving a little bit cheaper? You can get that too. So go explore their easy to use website today to find the solution to your auto parts needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box so they know we sent you? Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com. Thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen every day. We're free and available 5 days a week for y'all, wherever you get your podcast, Monday through Friday. No paywall, anything like that. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube as well. Talking to Jeff Garcia at Jeff G Spurs Zone, host of the Locked On Spurs podcast. So we both feel that like these teams have kind of overachieved in a sense, you know. So I think this is a pretty even matchup. And, you know, you mentioned it before, I think in the last segment here, where Spurs have the season series. It's 3-1 in favor of San Antonio. But there's only been really one game where it's almost like the Pelicans at full strength, and the Pelicans, as we've seen them kind of peak at the end of the season. The numbers have been saying, you know, they were 7th in offense since February, 8th in defense, 7th net rating. You know, do you think that's going to maybe play a factor in there, or are you confident that as a whole, the San Antonio defense is going to be able to at least slow down Brandon Ingram or CJ McCollum? Or are you kind of worried potentially if it's a close game in the fourth quarter, knowing that you have those two shot creators out there?
Yeah, I'm a little worried defensively because defensively the Spurs slid a little bit towards the end of the season. You saw individual players just have career nights. Cat with 60 points on San Antonio, and then his teammate Anthony Edwards just explodes in one of the last games against San Antonio, giving up leads. That's one thing they tend to this young Spurs team does. They give up leads easily. And they take their foot off the gas. They still haven't matured enough to where they can just take out a team, where they go full Bane and break back man's back.
Yeah, just basically go right in the beginning and just never let up.
Yeah, exactly. They still lack that ability. So I wouldn't be surprised to see their defense slip during this game. But they just kind of been a middle of the pack defensive team. You know, their defensive rating this year was 112.0, and that was 16 out of 30 teams. So they're right in the middle, you know. So they're good, they're not bad, they're just there. Offensively, is where they offensively is where they shine. I think I don't worry about them on offense. I just worry them on defense. But you know, I know the old adage: you throw the regular season out the window. You know, it's a brand new season. But if we're looking at the numbers, you know, from the regular season matchups, Spurs outscored the Pelicans 113 per game to 109 per game. Rebounds were about even. Each had 45. Now, this is one thing I need the Spurs to really, really do. They were one of the best teams at keeping turnovers down to a minimum. And Jake, they had a string of 10 straight games as well of playing clean basketball, where they committed fewer fouls than their opponent. So, and that came in late, and so that to me was a sign. Okay, they're understanding each other. They're getting the game. They're learning the NBA game.
It's like the sign of like a well-coached team, right? As you mentioned, they're
Right.
fifth best when it comes to not turning the ball over. That
Right.
feels like a lot of Gregg Popovich in some,
Hmm.
in that. Same with the fouling, right? Like they're just.
Right.
That's why you never count this Spurs team out. I remember we did
Yeah.
the big crossover right around the NBA trade deadline or the All-Star weekend. I forget which it was, and we were talking about it. And it's like, I don't want to rule the Spurs out. I don't think I ever want to rule the Spurs out because of things like that. Because Gregg Popovich is there on the sideline coaching these guys up incredibly well.
Yeah, yeah, and you look at the individual players, and yeah, they're good, solid kids out there in San Antonio, but it's the guy on the sidelines that's putting it all together. Credit him too. The whole season, he was just very patient, very patient. Now, were there a couple games where maybe he lost his cool a bit with these young kids? Yes, but for all in everything that this man went through in a real, true coaching season. He started his career with David Robinson. Then he followed that with Tim Duncan. And then he had LMA and Kawhi and DeMar. This was his first real season coaching the young Spurs team. So, not a bad job considering these are all late first round picks. Their highest pick in recent memory was an 18-year-old Josh Primo. I think he has been the glue that has been keeping this team together. And I look at him and I'm like, man, I know the curtain is going to be falling on his career soon, but I mean, this is what he can do with a starless team. And if he gets one more season with them, and draft picks that they got coming up and a bunch of money to spend in the offseason, yeah, I think he may be back for one more go round. But as far as this game tomorrow night, yeah, I look at these two teams and they're close to evenly matchup. You look. I think there was only one big blowout. Was it by you guys? I think that was the big one.
Second to last game. The third one in the series was the only one that was like massive either way this year.
Yeah, they've been close games. I think 10 points. What is that on the February 12th matchup? 124, 114 Spurs. And then the March 26th one, 107, 103. So
it was right down to the end, and New Orleans had the lead till they kind of blew it away, basically.
Right. Yeah. By the way, I got to ask you, any word on Zion? Anything that's just not going to happen? Or
he's not playing in this game. He's not going to play in this game. For listeners, I will talk more about this in tomorrow's show. He's playing 5-on-5. He wants to play, but I cannot see a world based on what I've heard, and I'll elaborate more in tomorrow's show. I got to tease ahead, right? I got to make him listen tomorrow here with some of this. Based on what I've heard, how he's looked in those 5-on-5s. No, I can't. Maybe, who knows? But no, he's not playing.
All right. Perfect. Good. Yeah. Because I think one of the rare games he's ever played, didn't he go ballistic on San Antonio? Like he's just knocking down threes.
Yeah. That was his NBA debut in the Smoothie King Center in New Orleans, where he hit 4 straight threes after first start. Gregg Popovich starts doubling him whenever he gets the ball because Pop isn't going to let Zion go off in his first, his professional NBA debut on ESPN. The dude's a pretty good coach and doubles him every time. So forces him out of the paint. He can't get anything going. He takes a 3, makes it. And it's like, oh, okay, sure. Takes another one. You don't really want him doing that, makes it. He hit 4 straight threes and the place went ballistic, basically.
I remember that. Yeah. And while I was sitting down watching it, just crying.
And the Spurs still won.
Yeah. The Spurs still won. But no, one of the little key things to watch with this young Spurs team, they got better towards the end of the season, but it was the among the Spurs fan base, it was the infamous third period or the ending of the third period. Jake, it didn't matter if this team was down just a single point at trying to enter the fourth period. I would say for 70 of the 82 games, the Spurs had lost every single game. Okay. And then it got corrected towards the end of the season where I think they finally won one. I believe, I don't have the number on me. I think they've only won 3 games this entire season when they're trailing after the third. So that is very indicative. You said
about put your feet on the gas and don't let up. And if you can kind of get that lead, maybe you can carry it through to the fourth quarter. No, that's a great number and something to kind of keep an eye on. So it could be one of those games where whoever makes the right adjustments comes out strong in the third quarter.
Yeah, and
is going to really have a big advantage.
And I think we're overlooking this matchup. The Popovich Willie Green. I mean,
Oh,
you got
look, I don't know about that. Like, I think Popovich has the edge there. And again, there's a reason bit. I don't like to rule out the Spurs, on anything. In Pop, we trust basically when it comes to that sort of thing. But it's going to be a fun one. Look, it's an even matchup. New Orleans per betonline.net favored by 5.5, depending on the moment that you're looking at it, which probably means Brandon Ingram's healthy. And I think we're going to see a full complement of everyone in this one. And it's just fun to have a basketball game that has like such high stakes with this, and people are going to be really excited for it. And that's kind of why I love the play-in tournament, because we wouldn't be doing this otherwise, and we wouldn't all be excited. So this is going to be a lot of fun, I think, on Wednesday night.
Yeah, and the play-in tournament is just more than just a tournament. I had a chance. The NBA invited me to chat with the competition committee representative from them, and I asked them. Yeah. And I asked the guy. I was like, "Hey, NBA guy, do you have any numbers, or some sort of data that suggests that maybe this play-in game is more than just a game, that it's a developmental tool?" And I was shocked when he was just like an open book with me. He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "As a matter of fact." He goes, "I've talked to the Spurs. As a matter of fact, they told me they see this as a developmental tool." So I think this is just the idea of the play-in game goes beyond the elimination game. The excitement of that, it's very useful. Look at Memphis. Yep. Memphis used that play-in game.
That's a great point.
Yeah, catapulted them into what they are now. And I think the Spurs see it the same way. And I also, for a team that's pretty much starting all over again in their franchise history, it was San Antonio. I think you have to take these little baby steps, for them. It's, getting smacked up for a good chunk of the season, which they did this year, and then finally getting it clicking at the right time, which they did, and then earning themselves a spot in the play-in. And I think this is just part of this Spurs path now. They're starting all over again. And hey, if the play-in catapults them into what they were before, I'll take it. But Spurs fans are definitely impatient, though. When you have TD and Kawhi and LMA and DeMar, and then you go to, at least for a while, an all-starless team, that they get impatient fast.
Yeah, no, I hadn't thought of it in terms of like a developmental tool and the extra preparation that these young guys on both of our teams are going to go through. I think it's something that, as you said, maybe it helps you kind of get on that Memphis trajectory, which we would both love. So, Jeff, I appreciate you taking the time. Good luck to the Spurs here. Everyone give them a follow. It's at Jeff G Spurs Zone. Yeah, thanks, man. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. Thank you all very much for listening. Don't forget, pregame party at Rusty Nail. Thank you, Boot Crew Media and Pels 12 for putting this on. I will be there, then walking up with y'all to the game on Wednesday. Don't forget, tune in tomorrow a little bit on Zion. How's he doing in 5-on-5? What about the key matchup, as I mentioned in this one, between Herb Jones and Dejounte Murray? I have the numbers on the individual matchups from the 4 regular season games. Looking forward to it. We're going to preview the game in tomorrow's episode of Locked On Pelicans. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, and we'll be back with y'all then.